All right, I didn't mean to be late. I have an excuse. I'll tell you about it in just a sec. Hello, welcome to another beautiful morning up north. I'm Pat Kreitlow here on Lake Wissota. My guest is Sean O'Malley in just a moment to talk a bit about the economy. We also have many more items on our new Do Something calendar of events. Let's stop that right there. There we go. See what happens when you don't have Parker producing things anymore. So now a little bit of housekeeping. Why was I late? Because I was just getting confirmation from Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez's people that she will be joining us next Monday live at 9 a.m. So again, next Monday, we will have Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez joining us. Before all of that, though, let's see, we've got tomorrow, Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and will be joined as well by Sean Fettiplace from Main Street Alliance, Main Street Action, about a couple of events that they are planning. So Sarah Godlewski and Sean Fettiplace tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Of course, Friday, well, it wouldn't be Friday without a check-in from Dr. Kristen Lyerly, so we will talk to her and see what kind of things have been in the news at the intersection of healthcare and politics. Monday, as I mentioned, Lieutenant Governor Rodriguez. Next Wednesday, I think we're going to have Mark Jacob in to help us beat the press, as I like to call it. Jennifer Schulze will probably join us the following Wednesday, January 28th. That's all live at 9 a.m. Let me put in a plug for Chad Holmes because I was on his show yesterday, and it wasn't on 98.9 WXCO, the civic media station there in Wausau. He has the 8 o'clock hour on the radio. The 9 o'clock hour is on the WXCO YouTube channel. So if you go find that, you'll find a really good, nearly hour-long conversation that I had with Chad Holmes yesterday. So give a listen and a follow to him as well. All right, one more thing before I get to Sean O'Malley. I have an article on the Up North News website about how Republicans are going to use the so-called 400-year veto to blame Governor Evers and Democrats for last month's very high property tax bills. That's a load of bull. You can read about it on the website, and I'm sure we're going to cover it multiple times here so that you can talk about it yourself. And that way, when it comes up in conversations during political campaigns, and it will, you'll be able to answer the Republican talking points on that. All right, here's another topic you should be ready to deal with. Why is it a very big deal that Donald Trump is threatening another politically charged criminal probe, this time against the head of the Federal Reserve? Let's ask our guest, Sean O'Malley, a Hudson native with extensive experience on Wall Street in financial compliance, guarding against financial crimes, all the things that help people follow the rules. And now he can help us follow the people who are trying to break the rules and do some great harm to our economy as a result. Sean, good morning from Bayfield. How are you today?
Yeah, good morning, Pat. Yes, greetings from lovely Bayfield. It is 8 degrees and probably not going to get much warmer, but
Yeah.
it's a beautiful day here in Wisconsin. And yes, it's not such a beautiful day, however, for Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. Although it's interesting how things have kind of unfolded in that scenario.
Yeah, let me set this up for folks because again, there are these multiple subpoenas that have gone out that you're going to tell us about. So let me put it to you this way. Why should people in Wisconsin care about this? It's far away. It's complicated. It involves a lot of money. It involves a president who Americans feel was duly elected, and so he should get to do whatever he wants because that's what all presidents do, right? So explain why that's wrong, actually, in the real world, and why people
Yeah, well,
really,
in the real world.
why should people take this seriously? Why should they take this whole setup threatening a criminal probe against the Fed chair seriously?
Yeah, well, the one of the things that's worked best, I think, in the economic life of the United States is the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has worked well because it's independent from political life. It makes decisions based on what is best for the American economy, not based on what some particular politician, be it a president or whomever, wants in terms of, interest rate environment and that sort of thing. This is the first time ever in history that we have had a sitting president actively trying to lobby in the open, because that's the one thing you have to remember about Donald Trump. Most of the crimes are committed in the open, so there's no cover up to talk about. It's happening right in front of you. And that's exactly what happened with these subpoenas that went to the Federal Reserve over this false claim, this false narrative that something's going on with the spending around the revisions to the Federal Reserve buildings, which have been on the calendar for years. So it's really kind of ridiculous. And in response to these subpoenas, Jerome Powell came out, to his credit, quite clearly, quite forcefully, saying, look, this is happening because I would not lower interest rates. And the reason you don't want to have political influence in your monetary policy, remember, there are two types, right? There's fiscal policy, which is determined by the government. What are we going to spend our money on? Monetary policy is, sort of what actually drives the economy. And that's where the Federal Reserve really dominates, not Congress or the president. So you want that independence so that they're doing what's best for the American economy. If we left things up to Donald Trump, he would lower interest rates incredibly, which is going to overheat the economy. And you're going to basically, when it does overheat, you're going to wind up with an economic collapse that's going to be on par with some of the worst economic events that we can recall from the last century plus.
Well, so that's where I feel like we should underscore this whole notion of people feel like politics infiltrates everything and that there is no so-called independence. But, again, it doesn't get the attention it deserves. And I'm not saying that there's anything that's completely free from politics, but
Right.
there is a balance to be struck here. And we actually have that balance of independence more than I think people realized before Donald Trump came up and tried to blow up the independent agencies, and now the independence of the Federal Reserve, the independence of the Department of Justice. Independent decision making by experts has always been at the crux of what helps a democracy and what helps our economy to work, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, look at what Donald Trump did year one. And this is outside of the realm of just pure economics. He eliminated all of the inspectors general. Okay. So those are the people there that are there to, control things and talk about identifying waste and fraud. That was the job of the inspector general. So you're going to eliminate all of them, also eliminate all the checks and balances that they provide, including holding the administration accountable, because Donald Trump does not want to have his administration held accountable in any way, shape, or form. And then he put Doge in place, which spectacularly imploded. And now we have basically no inspector generals. He even dismissed the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is, talk about a nonpartisan job. They're number crunchers. I mean, you could fire them if they were bad at math, maybe, but because they're reporting numbers that you don't like, they just grind through the data and crunch what it is, and then they tell you what it is at the end of the day. But now that we have this very politicized environment influencing the economy in a lot of ways, we're stuck in this position of not being able to rely on the information that is being provided to us, because and there are demonstrable ways in which it definitely seems tainted, and we can go through that, as well. But you definitely have them trying to influence interest rates. Why? Self-dealing. It's in his best interests.
And that's the thing that, again, I want people to understand when they go, why should we care about this? Because you would have things in your life that right now you don't have to worry about, but that people in, so-called third world countries have to think about when political influence interferes with the workings of an economy. And we don't, again, capitalism, socialism, Marxism. Look, if we're going to have a capitalist society that operates, capitalism by its very nature has to have some guardrails. There's still too many people out there that think capitalism is something that only works as a market and that there shouldn't be a government. Well, Econ 101, Sean, tells us otherwise.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the simple fact is that what you're seeing and there are ways that this is measured, like the Gini coefficient, the income inequality, the wealth inequality in this country is the widest it has been in a century. And that kind of, if you go back a century, that was prior to, the Great Depression, excuse me. almost said the Great Recession, which was bad, but
A little
we're
more
talking
recent,
about
yeah.
setting ourselves up for something that's even potentially worse, because we have fewer and fewer people that are responsible for more and more of the GDP growth. Okay. I mean, the GDP number, look at it for a third quarter last year, was reported a very robust 4.3%. Now, if you went out and asked your average American third quarter of 2025, hey, do you feel like you're better off financially? I think the response would be no, heck no, because they were feeling the price increases and everything else. The GDP growth that we're seeing is so narrow and impacting and benefiting such a small segment of society. It's primarily those who own stocks. Okay. And because the people who own stocks are making money, they're also responsible for over 50% of consumer spending. And the two biggest things that influence, well, the three major things that influence GDP in total, right, is consumer spending, investment, and government spending, right? So you got investment, that's the stock market. Stock market went up. Consumer spending, well, some portion of this of society was spending freely because they were making a lot of money in the stock market. And government spending, it's shifted, but they're spending a lot of money, which is why our debt, our national debt is growing at the rate of about $1 trillion every 3 to 4 months.
Sean O'Malley is joining us, and we are talking a bit about the political influence, shall we say, that Donald Trump is trying to exert through, criminal activity, if need be, making up criminal charges. And by the way, before we leave this topic, irony alert, that these charges involve perhaps financial misuse of the way the Federal Reserve is working on the remodeling of public buildings from
Yes.
an administration that tore down part of the White House without
Right.
warning, without permits, and it turns out without a plan, without transparency of who is paying for this. So the notion that a president is going after the Federal Reserve Chair for the way that he's handling building projects is, well, I mean, it's par for the course for Trump.
Well, it is. But the funny thing is that there was, for the Federal Reserve, there was a complete plan. It was reviewed, it was approved, it went through all the controls, unlike what happened with the East Wing. And having done a personal private tour of that entire building many years ago, I find it sad that there is that part of that building that is just gone now. And even though Donald Trump is being pursued in court for his attempt to build his monstrosity of a ballroom, it's because he thinks the rules don't apply to him.
Oh, he has said as much. He said his only limits are his own mortality.
His own morality.
Yeah. So
I would sooner rely on the intellect of a slug than Donald Trump's morality.
Yes. Let's turn to some economic updates here, and let's start with GDP and what the size of the economy is. And this is the one where I always appreciate having you here, the experts who will tell us, don't just look at a top line number, which in this case would be, an economic growth of 4.3%. But
Right.
what's behind that number? Is there a lot behind that growth, or is it something very narrow, the size of, a bubble, perhaps?
Yeah. Well, that's a very interesting choice of words, Pat. Yes. As I was just talking about, yeah, we know that the benefit for that GDP growth has been benefiting a very narrow segment of American society. It's pretty much the top 10%, those who own stocks, those who have enough money to drive over 50% of consumer spending. But let's also take a look at why they are making a lot of money in the stock market. It's because AI-oriented stocks are up a ton. People are talking about this AI bubble. It's been talked about for several months. We don't really know for sure if it's a bubble or not until it pops. But what we can say for certain is that the valuations are definitely very high relative to any historical measure. They're not quite as bad as some of the ones that we saw in the dot-com bubble, which was 25, 26 years ago. But we know that they're definitely elevated. And the question is all of this spending and investment in AI actually going to materialize in economic benefit at the end of the day? And if it falls short of that expected economic benefit, there will be a pop to that bubble. It's just a matter of how big will the pop be.
We're talking to Sean O'Malley. He's a finance and economics expert, and we are talking at the moment about some economic updates. Folks that follow this page know that I went off on the New York Times when the last jobs report came out. It was, as you rightfully noted, an anemic 50,000 new jobs. And yet, and again, had that been under the Biden administration, the New York Times headline would have said anemic growth, and instead it said modest growth for about half the day. And then I feel like people started to really pile on, and they, I think more rightfully, Sean noted that job growth of 50,000 in a month is not good.
No, I mean, I've said that all last year. Anything under 100,000 is basically not even a replacement rate. Okay, so if you have fewer than 100,000 jobs being created according to non-farm payroll, your labor force is shrinking. Okay, your unemployment is going up. That's basically accepted as historical fact. Now, what I find really interesting and very unbelievable, non-credible, is that apparently the December unemployment number, right, that coincided with that 50,000 non-farm payroll, the unemployment number reportedly went down from November's 4.6% to 4.4%. I'm going to call BS on that, because there is no way that you have job growth that is that anemic and suddenly have the unemployment rate go down. That just doesn't correlate. If you know you are structurally losing jobs at a certain rate, which tends to be just under that 100,000 per month figure, and you're only replacing 50 of them, unemployment got to be going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
they're reporting a number that's lower, which brings into question the credibility of the numbers that were being sent out, because that non-farm payroll number and unemployment is being reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And we know that the head of that area got fired last fall and has been replaced with the Trump loyalist.
Inflation the same way. I mean, the president again just said yesterday or the day before that, grocery prices are coming down rapidly. And again, a whole lot of people called bullshit real fast on that.
Yeah, and as well they should, because it is bullshit. Anyone who goes to the grocery store or, anything, I mean, we have one narrow segment where prices are down. Price of gas is down. Great. But that started a while back.
I was going to say, that's a winter thing. That's a winter thing. I'm looking this week at Tom Tiffany, because he's running for governor, posed on social media with, look how low the gas prices are. Thank you, Donald Trump. And again, the comment section was like, buddy, that's every winter. Gas prices are lower. Your guy didn't do that.
Yeah, no, let's explain the seasonality real quickly. You want to know why gas use goes up in the summer? People do more traveling in the summertime. They use more gas. Okay. That's why gas prices go up in the summer. And when they do a lot less traveling on average, they go down in the winter. That's it. Very simple, gas economics 101. But what we've seen in the inflation number is it went down. I mean, so we had a September number of 3%. October was canceled due to the federal government being shut down. And then it seems that they decided to make up a number, and they weren't really creative about it, and they decided to just sort of keep it static. So for both November and December of 2025, they're reporting inflation of 2.7%. And I think a lot of people are calling bullshit on that one. And I will be, at the front of that crowd, because there is no way that you have that much of a reduction in the CPI when people are seeing with their own eyes the prices that are going up, across the board. I mean, you think they're not buying groceries? You think they're not able to look at the stickers and see how much less money they have at the end of every month? And you're seeing it in credit card debt. Credit card debt's going up. That only happens when people are financially stretched.
Let me ask you about one more because, again, there's a reason why people in the administration are talking up that the trade deficit is shrinking. And that was the whole point of the trade war and all these tariffs is that, we've got this trade deficit that's out of whack. And now they're talking about the trade deficit is lowering. And so, again, for folks that don't follow this regularly, can they be excused for thinking, well, that's what Trump wanted, so that's a good thing, right? Or no?
Well, that is what Trump wanted. It would be a good thing. Unfortunately, it's not true. The trade deficit was actually lower in 2024 than it was in 2025. So all of the efforts and the trade war that we're currently undergoing and the tariffs, I mean, there's just so much chaos. Our trading partners don't trust us anymore. They are circumventing us. We've talked about that before. That will continue. So that's why nobody's buying. It's the avoid America trade, right? And that's what a lot of foreigners are doing. And going and kidnapping Maduro from Venezuela and loudly banging on about how we want to take over Greenland as the 51st state. I mean, it's like, get in line. Okay, you're talking about Colombia as the 51st state. You're talking about Mexico. You're talking about Cuba. You're talking about Canada. I mean, are we trying for Western Hemisphere expansion and regime replacement? It gets kind of, nuts that we're taking our trade issue and seemingly making it a military one.
And yet, this is why we need people to interpret these economic numbers. And not just, the reason why the numbers might be suspect, but, what is the direct impact on us? And again, you've got to go past the bluster of the people who are putting this economy into the state that it's in. Sean O'Malley, it's always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for all the explanations. Stay warm up there in Bayfield. We'll talk again soon.
Will do, Pat. You
right,
too. Take care.
Thank you very much. All right, we've got a very busy calendar of events that is coming up after our history lesson. I'm Pat Kreitlow. You're up north. All right. Well, this time around, I did get better at putting the history lesson notes in the comment sections of Facebook and YouTube, since we can't really play them here, but a few things I thought that you would enjoy. It was on this day, 74 years ago, the debut of Today on NBC. And yes, they did have film of that very first show with Dave Garroway. So click on that link there in the comment sections, and you will see the very first episode of Today on NBC. Birthdays today include LL Cool J, who turns 58 years old today. I learned last year on the history lesson that his stage name stands for Ladies Love Cool James, because his birth name is James Smith. But apparently Jim Smith just isn't going to sell as much as LL Cool J. On this day, also in 1968, when little James Todd Smith was born, the Green Bay Packers defeated the Oakland Raiders 33-14. It was Vince Lombardi's final game coaching the Green Bay Packers. There is a link to the Foo Fighters Learn to Fly video in the comment section, because Dave Grohl turns, 56 years old today. Is that right? 57 years old today. And actor Jason Bateman also turns 57 years old today. Can hardly believe they're both born on the same day. Elvis Presley's Aloha from Hawaii took place this day in 1973. It was the first concert featuring just one performer to be broadcast live via satellite. Folks in Australia, Japan, and other nearby countries saw it live. Most other places watched it later on tape delay, and the concert was released as a double album later that year, 1973. The number one song this day in 1978 was Baby Come Back by Player. Also on this day in 1978, Fleetwood Mac's Rumors album was the number one album for a record 31st week on the album chart. There is a link to Madonna's first appearance on American Bandstand this day in 1984. It's queued up to the part where Dick Clark asks the young singer about her ambitions, and she says, well, it's to rule the world. And on this day in 1980, Rush released Permanent Waves, their seventh studio album. It featured The Spirit of Radio and Free Will to make it their first album to reach the top 5 on the U.S. album charts. All right, calendar of events. Let me go cue that up and have it for you next. All right, now it's time for Do Something, a 2026 calendar that can help with ideas to do something to bring America back from the realm of ridiculousness. We are just getting started on this, so your suggestions are welcome. Today, for example, and let me see, I think I actually put these up on a slide here, so let me get that for you. There we go. Today, for example, around Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Alliance for Retired Americans, along with other partner organizations, is holding noon-hour rallies across the state in support of saving Social Security and opposing another government shutdown. And yes, boys and girls, remember that we are once again still operating under a temporary deal. Another government shutdown is not out of the question. If you head over to the Oneida County Democrats Facebook page, you'll see details on them meeting on Lincoln Street in Rhinelander today at noon, in Eau Claire, the Social Security office on Oakwood Hills Parkway, Madison on Odana Road, Racine, Stevens Point, Wisconsin Rapids, Wausau, Greenfield in the Milwaukee area, all there. And you can head to wisconsin.retiredamericans.org, wisconsin.retiredamericans.org. Tonight is the Waukesha County Democratic Party monthly meeting, 7 o'clock at Southminster Presbyterian Church in Waukesha. Their guest is going to be gubernatorial candidate, state senator. Today's is, I've got that wrong on there. Today's is Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley. And then their next meeting, February 19th, is Kelda Royce. I'm sorry, I'll make that correction on there for next time. Tonight, Brad Smith, a candidate for Congress looking to challenge Glenn Grothman, is speaking to the Winnebago Democratic Party's monthly meeting in Oshkosh. And then on Saturday, he has a Sheboygan County kickoff event. You can go to Brad Smith for Congress on Facebook to learn more. On Thursday, Rice Lake Indivisible will be meeting at 5:30. Search for Rice Lake at indivisible.org to get details. Friday is the Pete Buttigieg rescheduled town hall in the La Crosse area. Saturday, Chippewa Valley Indivisible has moved its Saturday afternoon meeting to deal with increased ice activity in western Wisconsin. So the Saturday meeting for Chippewa Valley Indivisible is now 4 p.m. at Our Savior's Lutheran on Mansfield Street in Chippewa Falls. On Saturday, the Ozaukee County Democrats have begun a weekly food drive on Cheyenne Avenue in Grafton. That'll happen every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Monday is Martin Luther King Day. The League of Women Voters of Milwaukee County will host an event titled, Where Do We Go From Here? What's Next? You can learn more at lwvmilwaukee.org. Again, for League of Women Voters, lwvmilwaukee.org. Next Tuesday, January 20th, will again be the Free America Walkout. Local events are starting to come together for folks walking out at 2 p.m. next Tuesday, the 20th. Tomorrow, we'll talk to Sean Fettiplace about how Main Street Action has a day of grassroots activity at the state capitol next week, Tuesday. And then next week, Wednesday, Main Street Action is putting together that first gubernatorial forum with the 7 leading Democratic candidates. Again, Sean Fettiplace will join us tomorrow, as will Secretary of State Sarah Godlewski, who is helping with promoting these events. She is a candidate for lieutenant governor as well. All right, well, since this is my personal warm-up act for my day job over at Up North News, let me thank you again for the first round of responses to our question of the week that you can find in our Sunday newsletter. And this week I asked, how are you unplugging from the news? And in fact, Ellie Bordeaux put it in today's daily newsletter that you can sign up for at upnorthnewswi.com. And I give a few ideas here, whether they're physical activities or mental activities. Maybe you're just finding other non-political things like podcasts or movies to watch. And other people are just fessing up and saying, I just don't tune out enough and frankly could use a few more activities. So again, we'd love to hear your thoughts on decompression. And to learn more, of course, you can sign up for my Sunday morning newsletter at upnorthnewswi.com. Click subscribe up there in the top banner. All right. Well, again, Sean Fettiplace and Sarah Godlewski tomorrow, Kristen Lyerly on Friday, and Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez next Monday. Thank you for being part of another beautiful morning up north. I'm Pat Kreitlow. We'll see you next time.